Good morning, everyone. Welcome, settle in. We're about to begin. My name is Micah Russell. I'm the interim dean of the Clark Family School for Environment and Sustainability and the MEM director. And I am so pleased to welcome you here today to launch our community forum, where we'll be hearing about the accomplishments of our student researchers and project leaders. So we have students in the Master in Environmental Management program, students in the MS Ecology program, and students in the Employees program who are working towards both degrees, presenting over the next 3 days. And I just have to say, to kick things off, that this is a time of year for us as faculty and staff where we have been working so hard towards this culmination of the academic year, but this event always puts wind in our sails. It always energizes us because it is absolutely inspiring what our students accomplish. You know, they are laying the groundwork for really impactful careers, but they're also doing good work on behalf of a web of community sponsors working to do research that or project work that benefits nonprofits, state and federal agencies, municipalities, county governments, private individual landowners, you name it. So we're going to get a taste of that diversity of work over the next 3 days, and I know it'll light us all up. It'll be really inspiring. So just a few notes about format. If you're new to this event, I just want to let you know what to expect from these panel presentations. So first of all, each panel will give a 5-minute introduction. Each panel has presenters that are doing work that is thematically linked, and they'll talk about that theme and where they fit in to that important initiative. And then we'll move into 13 minutes presentations from each individual panelist with a 2-minute Q&A for each individual. So after each presenter, there'll be an opportunity to ask 1 or 2 questions, and then we will be moving on to the next presenter. But have no fear, at the end of the panel, after everybody on the panel is presented, there will be a 10-minute Q&A for us to ask questions of anybody on the panel. So again, we have a 5-minute intro to the panel, 13-minute presentations with 2-minute Q&As for each individual, and then we wrap each panel with a 10-minute Q&A. We are moving swiftly over the next few days to get to all of our incredible project leaders and researchers. So we do have to stay on time, and our facilitators, our faculty facilitators, are going to be managing that really tightly. We are also using Slido. So we will have the Slido app with the QR code presented up here and online on Zoom. And that will be how the audience can submit questions. So watch for that coming up. And thank you to everyone on the staff and faculty team at the Clark School who has set up this incredible event. We're so grateful to your hard work to make this a big celebration of our students. I want to pause, though, and welcome a few distinct groups. The first, obviously, our students. Second, we know we are going to be seeing some family members and members of our students' support systems. And so if you're in that group, thank you so much for helping our students get to this point in their lives and for being here to help us celebrate. And finally, if you're a community sponsor, if you are working with our students in a professional setting and helping to mentor them as they grow professionally, thank you as well. And we will be looking forward to engaging with you more during breaks and offering our gratitude one-on-one. But for now, you know, we're going to switch gears here and offer a tribute to someone who is really special to us. And I'd like to invite MJ Pickett up to the stage. MJ, where are you at? Come on up. Thank you. MJ, of course, is a longtime friend of the Clark Family School of Environment and Sustainability and former executive director of the Cold Harbor Institute. Myself and MJ, we're going to offer some reflections on the importance, the impactful legacy of our benefactor and namesake, Butch Clark, and then we will roll into our first panel. But it's really important that we pause here and reflect on how special it is to have Butch as a guiding member of our community. And we're so grateful to have Butch in the audience this morning. So good to see you here, Butch. Thank you. So for the Clark School, the legacy of Butch's family goes back a long ways. Butch's father gave an initial gift to the Clark School some almost 25 years ago now, and then later was instrumental in helping to resource us to change the environment and sustainability minor to a major. Later on, Butch's impact in honor of his father's wishes grew even more exponentially. Butch has been instrumental in helping to support a key sustainability faculty position and has been instrumental in helping to support fellowships for a number of Clark School fellows, graduate students every year. And obviously has underwritten our school more recently with a very generous gift and has very humbly accepted the fact that we insisted that we name the school after him and his family, his father, his mother, his wife Judy, and himself were all instrumental in helping us to grow our capacity to do more and do better things with our students. So while all of the financial gifts have been really instrumental in growing our impact and our ability to support more and more students who we know will become environmental leaders in the future, we're also really guided by his intellectual curiosity and his values. The one thing that stands out to me when I think about Butch and reflect on his impact in our lives is his integrity. So he absolutely lives his values. He has demonstrated time and time again that in addition to his incredible intellect and his background in environmental issues and social welfare issues, for example, his PhD is still incredibly relevant in the sense that it really tackled issues and challenges and potential solutions for communities dealing with boom and bust cycles related to extractive industries. All of that is to say that Butch's legacy here goes way beyond the financial resources he has shared. His intellect, his values, his integrity are on display throughout the community. It's not just the Clark School. He has helped several nonprofits. He's donated land. He's demonstrated on the street corner faithfully every week in support of peace. And he has been instrumental in elevating social issues that intersect with environmental issues, specifically around housing. Every time I've interacted with Butch, he's come to me with another really intriguing idea for our students to work on. And he's pushed us into partnerships and projects that wouldn't have occurred to us. So, Butch, thank you. Thank you for leading the way and being a model of integrity when it comes to environmental and social welfare of our community and the world. We are so grateful to have you as a figurehead for the work we do. Thank you, Butch. Now, another big impact that Butch has had has been in establishing the Cold Harbor Institute. And I have been privileged to mentor a number of students doing research and project work out at the ranch. And so I wanted to make sure that we heard from someone who has a history with Cold Harbor, who can speak to that legacy. So I'm going to pass the mic to MJ Pickett.
Hi, everyone. A few years ago, I was at one of Butch's birthday parties at the Art Center, and his good friend, George Sibley, described him and kept calling him Merlin, right? Someone with supernatural abilities to go far into the future or see far into the future and then help guide and steer steer the world for the better. And I don't think I've ever heard a better description of Butch. His vision for a more regenerative future created programs in the Institute for Applied Sustainability, which used to be part of the ENVS, School of ENVS, but then turned into Cold Harbor due to that vision. He created a place where students and community members could come together to forge a way forward through so many unknowns, and all in the name of finding that vision, that regenerative future. His kind heart and generosity supported over 65 MEM fellows and continues to support fellows, right, easing that financial burden of being a grad student. He also helped create affordable housing for students, for faculty. Over 10 years ago, he was offering faculty members a place to live while they were doing research, whether they were part of Western or traveling, and countless AmeriCorps members. So far into the past and far into the future, Butch has and continues to support some of the most vital, important work that many of you are doing. So through supporting fellowships, endowing the Cold Harbor Chair, held by Julie now, and providing a place where that vision has the ability to come to life through community engagement, I think just really shows that vision and shows the leadership that Butch has created and continues to show. So I'll just continue to refer to Butch as Merlin. So can you all join me in a round of applause for Gunnison's very own Merlin?
Thank you, MJ. I think to close our tribute to Butch, I'll just say that it's clear to me, not so much through the gifts he's made, but through the incredible web of people that love him and love what he represents in the community and love the work he does for the community. It's that love and admiration and respect that really speaks to the legacy of Butch. So again, Butch, thank you for being here. Could you stand and we'll give you a proper round of applause? All right. Well, what a way to kick off our celebration. Let's transition now. I'm going to invite Salif to the stage to facilitate our first panel. And I'll just encourage folks to engage with Butch on break. We wish we had time to hear from him, but I know all of you will take advantage of the break and express your well wishes and gratitude at that time. So Salif, take it away.
Thank you. So I'm going to introduce our first panel. Before I do that, I just want to remind everyone about Slido. So I will be using this tablet to monitor questions. And you can submit those if you're here in person. You should see QR codes taped to the chairs in front of you. If you scan that code, you'll be able to submit a question that I'll be able to see up here. If you are joining us via Zoom, you should be able to see a QR code virtually and be able to scan that and submit it. And I know at the end of the 4 presentations, that QR code will be on the screen and you can scan it and submit your questions. So the format is going to be that each of our 4 panelists is going to present, and then at the end of their presentation, there will be 2 minutes for questions for each panelist. And then at the end of the 4 presentations, there will be about 10 minutes to ask questions of all 4 panelists. So now I'd like to introduce the topic. It is renaturing, healing, and living in our urban environments. And to the stage, I'd like to welcome Graham, Triston, Abby, and Elle. And Elle is joining us from or at distance. Give them all a round of applause, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for showing up. My name is Graham Molinaro.
Hey everybody, I'm Triston.
And I'm Abby Slattery. Welcome to the first panel of the forum.
Renaturing means to restore nature to its natural place. As urbanization will increase due to the global human population increasing, it is important to protect, preserve, and enhance the open green spaces for generations to come in these urban trails. As the global population will reach to 8 billion people, as it did back in November in 2022, green spaces are becoming hard to find in urban areas, and these people will most likely live in urban areas. So it is important to protect and preserve these open green spaces so that everybody can enjoy nature as they see fit. My project looks at a man-made canal made in 1883 that used to be used to transport water. Now it is a trail that is used by many people for whatever outdoor recreation they need. So thank you.
Hi, Abby again. Healing is another theme of our panel. To heal can be a weapon. And I know this sounds strange, but I'll explain. I'm sure we can all agree that healing can be an advantage, and strength and renewal are part of this advantage. In the biggest battle of our lives, a changing climate versus humanity, healing is a weapon directly against climate change. Healing is to make good again and to mend. When climate change wants to make another advance on our environment, we can push back. We won't let a wetland go dry. We won't let our sage grouse disappear. We will instead restore, cure, and relieve. To heal is to battle back and to make changes to our environment that we actually want and need to see. Healing can also be the growth of the people of a community. Our environment not only heals with our actions, but with our changed perspectives and values. With all that said, healing is a weapon integral to climate action. Our projects all use healing as a weapon in different ways, as you'll see. My project is based in the city of Gunnison's climate action plan and sets out to heal both the environment and the community by advancing and bringing awareness to the city of Gunnison's climate action plan and the benefits of it. I invite y'all to see how each of our projects encompasses healing, and even invite y'all to contemplate how you've seen healing in other urban environments. But I look forward to sharing more about my project with y'all soon.
Hey everybody, in just a minute, I'll be telling you about my project, Gunnison Valley Community Composting. But before that, I wanted to briefly touch on the themes of living and living in a community. This means recognizing that we are part of the community and not separate from it, and that everything around us is alive. So what can we do to ensure that our human and more than human communities not only survive, but thrive? How can we live in a way that fosters communities that promote these areas? Thank you all for being here today, and we hope that you enjoy all the hard work from our presenters. Here's Graham.
Hi, everybody. My name is Graham Molinaro, and my project's on the Highline Canal Trail located in the Denver metro area. So the Highline Canal, in case most of you don't already know, it is a man-made canal that was built back in 1883 with the purpose of transporting water from the western slope to the Front Range during the time of the Homestead Act. Today, it is a public trail that is used by nearly 500,000 trail users each year. It is 71 miles, 850 acres, which is roughly the same acreage as New York City Central Park. It spans from Waterton Canyon, which is number 1 here, which is in Jefferson County, and goes all the way up to number 14, which is Green Valley Ranch, which is just south of Denver International Airport. Currently, The Highline Canal is owned by Denver Water. However, ownership is transitioning away from Denver Water to the cities and counties in which the Highline Canal goes through. This is a slow process and will take many years, but ownership is slowly but steadily transferring. So the backgrounds and methods for my project, the Highline Canal Conservancy, which was my community sponsor, they're dealing with a bit of a management issue with all the trees and barely any water. That is because Denver Water turned off the constant stream of water back in 2016 because there are better ways of transporting water to the farmers than man-made canals. So the trees are struggling to adapt. The mature trees, but especially the tree saplings that are just starting to grow, and now their water is disappearing. The most essential need for these trees to survive for any living organism, gone. Now, it is used for stormwater management, but stormwater is not a given. It really just depends if we're going to have a rainy season or not. So, the Highline Canal Conservancy is looking at two different possibilities. Plant xeric drought-resistant trees along the canal, or nurture and adapt the naturally growing volunteer tree saplings so that they can become mature trees and spread their seeds naturally. I was in Centennial, Colorado, collecting data from June to September, and my three sampling areas were Orchard Road, which is outside the Conservancy's office, DeCoven Park, which is a public park in Centennial, Colorado, and Highline Meadows, which is just a shopping center. So here is an ArcGIS map of all my tree sampling data points, as well as a color that shows each of my sampling points. It's important to know when I was out on the canal, I was looking for trees that had a diameter of less than 6 inches. I also measured the height of the tree and the crown length of the tree so that I can do some statistical analysis using the live crown ratio. So here is all the black dots. The black dots represents data points. Each data point might have 1 tree or it might have 5 trees. It really just depends on how much was naturally growing in these certain areas. So the result, I'm going to speed run this because we're going to go more in depth about it as this presentation goes on. But I collected 70 tree sampling data points. The most common were narrow-leaf cottonwoods, and we're going to go more about that in a little bit. The biggest issue was overcrowding with these trees. The most common wildlife that I noticed with the trapping cameras that I was given through the Haley grant were raccoons and squirrels by a wide margin. It wasn't even close, and we'll see that in a bit. And lastly, when I ran my statistical model, the only statistically significant issue with the trees was the tree damage. So did the tree have any herbivores eating on the leaves? Did the tree have any diseases? Was the leaves degrading over time? That was the most statistically significant issue with the trees with future survival, as well as overcrowding. So this slide demonstrates a very diverse viewpoint of each of the tree saplings that I collected. It's important to note that I used a dichotomous key of trees in Colorado that I bought through the Haley grant, as well as iNaturalist, just to double check myself. Narrowleaf cottonwoods were found the majority of the time at around 33%. Black locust, oh, that is not what I want. Oh, my bad on that. Black locust was found at 15.7%. Siberian elm was found at 8.6%. This was a surprise to the Highline Canal Conservancy because they were expecting the majority of which to be cottonwoods, because cottonwoods, especially plains cottonwoods, which was found at 11%, they were the most common mature trees that were found on the canal, and that was purposely planted back in 1883. This was the leaf damage, or not the leaf damage, the tree issues that I came across. By far the most was crowding. So whether there were multiple trees in one densely packed area, or vegetation that was out competing the tree saplings, or in the case of Russian olive, invasive species that were growing right near the trees. Other things to know, leaning. So was the tree severely leaning to an acute angle, which there were a lot of? Split trunk. Were the trees splitting from the trunk? It's not the end of the world, but it's not useful. You don't really want a tree to split like that. Aperture pretty much means is the tree growing near a bridge, power line, sign, anything that's human made that could affect the growth of the trees for the next few generations. And damage, was the tree damaged? That's pretty self-explanatory. So was any animals going through it? Was the leaf damaged? So on and so forth. This was the wildlife trapping camera. I received grant funding through the Haley family to get trapping cameras and look at if there's any species interactions with the tree saplings. I would set up the trapping cameras at the tree saplings just to see what's going on. And it wasn't even close. Raccoons at night, squirrels during the day, they were the most common animals that were found during this. This was also important as, why we need fencing and staking around the tree saplings, just so the wildlife doesn't go into that, which should bring me to the budget. So this is a budget that the Highline Canal Conservancy gave me, and this shows what would cost to plant a tree. Don't memorize it because we're going to break down the math in a little bit. This is the same exact table, only there's no trees because you're nurturing the tree saplings that are naturally growing on the canal. So let's break down this math. So for planting one tree, it would be $1,228. To plant 70 trees, it would come around $86,000. To nurture one tree, it would be $1,028. For nurturing 70 trees, it would be roughly $72,000. To nurture all 70 trees with every single action plan that I recommend, the Conservancy would save $14,000. The savings would increase to over $90,000 if they pick and choose which management action plan they really want. What do I mean by this? So there are 6 management action plans that I recommend. Think of this like a menu when you go to a restaurant. Do I want this? Do I not want that? Do I want to water? Do I not want to water? Shocker, you need to water. Stormwater is not guaranteed, and this is definitely going to be the most expensive investment, but it's going to be the most worthwhile. Mulching. Mulching helps build stability within the trees as well as provides a moisture around the trees so that you can use less water while still having the tree get more water within it. Fencing and staking. Staking, get the wildlife out and also build stability to the trees during high wind events. Overcrowding, get rid of the vegetation, get rid of the tree saplings that we know are not going to survive. Also, get rid of the invasive species. The goal is to make sure that these trees have enough nutrients to make sure that they are able to survive and thrive. Adopt a sapling program. The Highline Canal Conservancy has a program in which you can adopt a tree in your honor or a family member's honor, and that proceeds would go towards planting a tree. With this idea, you would save a lot of money by just adopting a tree sapling. The budget would go towards adding fencing, mulching, watering, as well as any other things needed to make sure that the trees survive and thrive for the next few generations. And then lastly, this is the one I'm most passionate about, community science. The Highline Canal Conservancy has a very robust and a very passionate volunteer base. And they have been shown to be willing to go well and beyond the call of duty to make sure that the Highline Canal is protected and preserved ecologically for generations to come. Before we go into everything right here, this is a picture taken at DeCoven Park in October during a tree planting event. We had over roughly 80 volunteers show up that day to plant trees. There is a market for this. And with community science, you can train them on natural resource practices. You can train them on identifying if a tree has issues before things go amok. Early detection is key. It's like in health, early detection is always key. So I believe the Highline Canal should extend this project, this inventory project, for the entirety of the 71 miles. The Conservancy would save a lot of money nurturing the tree saplings as opposed to planting drought-resistant trees. As well as keeping in mind DEI. I was in Centennial collecting this. That is different than Aurora and Green Valley Ranch, both ecologically as the canal gets as wide as it is right here when you start at Waterton Canyon. But as you go near Green Valley Ranch, it gets narrower and narrower. On top of that, there's a lot of economic issues. Where I was collecting data was a well-off neighborhood. Aurora and Green Valley Ranch, especially on East Colfax, is not well off. So it's important to look at DEI. And I already said this already, but I want to emphasize this again. Community science is the key, because we have a volunteer base. They are passionate about this. And I believe if you get the community involved, then they will successfully take everything and make it their own, because they are passionate about the canal. Oh my God, I can stand on the shoulders of giants. I first and foremost want to thank Dr. Brooke Sanatel for being just a phenomenal mentor. When no one believed in me here in Western, she did. So thank you so much, Dr. Z. To the Highline Canal Conservancy, thank you for taking a shot at me and giving me a chance to make this project truly a one of a kind. Thank you so much. To the Haley family, thank you so much for the grant funding for the dichotomous key, the trapping cameras, as well as a conference that I went to in Albuquerque for arboriculture. To the anonymous donor of the Highline Canal Conservancy that helped pay for this project, I don't know who you are. I tried to figure out who you were, but no one had the name. So thank you so much for it. To Julia Clover Clark, who was the natural resource manager, thank you so much with working with me on this project. You were truly a great mentor to me in that front. To Brianna Winters and Samantha Wilbur, they hired me to be their programs and events intern, where I truly learned a lot, not just about the Highline Canal, but about volunteer work. Thank you so much for that. To Dr. Chrissy Alba of the Denver Botanical Gardens, thank you for being such a great consultant and meeting with me over and over again to talk about our project. She did something similar on the Highline Canal, but yeah. To the Clark Family School and to my cohort, thank you guys so much for just being amazing people and teaching me a lot about life. To Laurel Hartley and Jesse Credit at CU Denver, without you guys, I would not be in grad school. And to my family and friends, thank you so much. Any questions? Sorry, I try not getting emotional. I knew I was when I got to the acknowledgement, because I dedicated like a year and a half to this. So I'm glad I did not burst into tears.
Awesome. Well, we do have a couple of questions. I know we'll have time for at least one, and let me know if we have time for two. So the first question is, are there concerns that some of the most used drought-resistant trees are invasive?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that anything that is not used to Colorado's climate and will outcompete the trees, that is definitely an issue. But going back to the slide where it has all the tree species, one of which was the golden rain tree, they do compete competitively in similar climates as Colorado. They are an Asian tree, but they have the similar climate resilience as the trees in the such as cottonwoods and black locusts. So of course there is an issue where the invasive trees could outcompete the native trees, but it really just depends ecologically where these trees are coming from. I hope that answered your question.
It's not my question personally, but it's
Well,
anonymous. It's Anonymous's question. Do we have time for one more? One more. Graham, how did you get connected to your project?
I used to set up trapping cameras at CU Denver with Dr. Laurel Hartley, and one of the sites I used to set up trapping cameras was at the Highline Canal Trail, and I was familiar with it, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then fast forward, I was living in Gunnison, and I just kind of had the idea about urban ecology and how important it was, because I grew up in Denver, and I kind of realized, you know, these open spaces that I grew up near, it's not common in like the major downtown areas. So we got Dr. Z and we got connected with Dr. Laurel Hartley, and she mentioned something about the Highline Canal. And I'm like, okay, I'll just do some research on it. What was supposed to be a 5-minute Google search turned into a year and a half of my life dedicated to this. So that's how I got connected with it.
Thank you so much for answering that. Next, I believe we have Triston. Let's give Graham a round of applause with Triston's welcome round of applause.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me. As I said, I'm Triston, and today I'm going to be discussing my project, Gunnison Valley Community Composting. So this project, excuse me, was really about combining the concepts of composting and community. We're all intelligent people here. Who here knows what a community is? All right, someone shout it out. All right, that's fair. I have defined a community as a group of people living and working together with common goals, attitudes, interests, etc. Composting, similarly, I'm sure many of you know what it is. I've defined it in two ways. One is the action of recycling your organic waste into a usable, compostable product. So the second definition is the product. It's the soil amendment that you use and put on crops, etc. So just during this presentation, we'll be exploring some of those questions and also further exploring what we tried in this project and some further next steps. Yeah. With that, I'd like to explore the community that this project was meant to serve. Here we have a picture of the Gunnison Valley, and this map depicts the density of commercial composting facilities in Colorado. So the darker the county, the more commercial composting facilities. As you can see, Gunnison Valley, pretty light color. There are no active commercial composting facilities in the valley. So there was a vacancy that we saw to be filled with this project. Additionally, in the valley, according to a 2018 waste audit conducted on the western slope, I believe it was out of Delta County, the Gunnison County has the potential to compost approximately 32% of all of its waste, and of that, 21% of its total waste is food waste. So we need to cut back on that. How do we get people to start composting? I couldn't encourage people to compost until I knew what composting was. So I had to explore who was doing it here in the valley and how it's done. That included visiting many places here in the valley. Starting here at Western, I explored the Rocket Composter, which composts our dining hall facilities, feedstocks in an in-vessel composting system. So an in-vessel system just means it's inside of something. It's inside of some sort of container that it gets composted in. There's other ways to compost that I had to explore, including turned windrow systems. That's just a big pile, usually in the municipal system, that people turn with tractors and that kind of thing. And a final large system that we explored are known as ASP, aerated static piles. So it's similar to windrows in it's just a large pile, but you never turn them. And instead, air is brought through the bottom, either with vents or passively. Additionally, I learned that compost is as complicated or as simple as you want to make it, which was good for me because I'm not a rocket scientist. So I liked the simplicity of it, but I also liked that you could get very in-depth and very deep into the soil sciences. Some of the things to explore if you're trying to compost yourself include feedstocks, just what are you putting into your compost that affects your nutrient balance, moisture content, temperature, airflow, etc. Yeah. So after gaining an understanding of what compost is, I needed to try and convince people to do it. So why compost? Here I've listed 4 overall broad benefits that I see for compost, but kind of breaking these down. The main objectives that we hope to fulfill with government benefits included meeting some of the the county, city, and other local municipalities' stated climate action goals. These are included in the Gunny Cares Act 2030, the Gunnison Valley Greenhouse Gas Mitigation Plan, Crested Buttes Climate Action Plan, and Mount Crested Buttes Master Plan. Some of these goals include siting and building a community scale composting facility and reducing organic waste from the landfill by as much as 100%. There are a variety of other community benefits, including just increasing resiliency within the community and increasing the community's knowledge about compost and how to do it, as well as environmental benefits, which may be obvious, such as increased plant growth, soil retention, and soil health. Additionally, there are economic benefits, such as the creation of green jobs in the circular economy or closed loop economy. With that in mind, in spring of last year, we needed to explore, is a business for this possible in the Gunnison Valley? Is it feasible? There have been several businesses that have come and gone. So with this in mind, we attended the CDPHE's Next Cycle Business Accelerator Program, which is meant to do just that, accelerate businesses. With that in mind, we were trying to explore partnership options, funding, pretty much figure out what we were doing and if this was possible in the Valley. So it was a great opportunity just to connect with the regulating agency, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, as well as other composters who were just starting out and trying to expand, including some such as Purple Bucket Compost out of Bailey, Colorado, and Compost Queen in Fort Collins. Yeah. So although we found that a business is feasible here in the Gunnison Valley, we were hesitant to immediately start a business, we being me and my community sponsor, because we still felt a little ignorant about business and neither of us wanted to dedicate creating a business. There's a lot of businesses and nonprofits that we thought we could partner with here in the Valley. So instead, we focused on trying to expand partnership opportunities and securing a location. We had originally had a secure location located here at Red Mountain Park in Crescent Butte South. There was a community composting system that unfortunately, due to the park's remodeling, had to be resited and removed in summer of 2023. So we were kind of stuck. We said, okay, we don't have a secure location. We need to find that. And neither of us wants to start a business. We need to find some partners. This brought us to a list of potential partners, which I've narrowed down to 10 here. As you can see, most of these are owned by some more sort of municipality or maybe the state. So we started to focus more heavily on trying to build municipal partnerships and other partnerships as well. This led to the creation of the Gunnison Valley Composting Project work group in the late fall of 2023. This involves 4 large groups, including Western Colorado University, Mountain Roots Food Project, which is a local nonprofit focused on agricultural sustainability and food security. Elements Mountain Compost, based out of Salida, which is a for-profit business, but the downside being that they're based out of Salida and therefore have to haul materials 65 miles each way. And the Gunnison Valley Climate Crisis Coalition, or GVC3, which is a Gunnison County local group of businesses and individuals focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the valley. Our broad goals were to seek funding, expand Elements Mountain Composting existing composting services in the valley by not only creating residential composting services, but also with the eventual goal of siting a composting location here in the valley and thus eliminating any greenhouse gas emissions from transport over the Continental Divide and creating more jobs. We were also focused on outreach in the form of workshops and educational materials. And we also, as mentioned before, were heavily focused on partnerships with local municipalities. So we pursued some funding through the RREO grant, which is a CDPHE grant, but unfortunately did not receive that funding. We were partially successful in expanding Elements Mountain composting services because we were able to expand their services and allow residential composting services, but we have been unable to find a location for permanent composting here in the valley. It doesn't seem that people want to compost. You know, there's been 2 businesses that have come and gone. And when we've approached some local municipalities, there is support on paper, but it's hard to get support for things like funding. Those are big asks. And when you're starting out with this kind of project without funding, you don't have the kind of capital to meet some of the demands that would be fair to compensate for that. For example, when we were trying to expand just the residential composting services, we thought about siting it maybe here at Western at the Chipeta Gardens, but it would have required capital costs of $5,000 a year, which we just are unable to afford at this time. Yeah, so there's more potential to partner with the local municipalities, but have been, you know, somewhat successful in that as well. So that brings me to some next steps, which really are just securing a location for that phase 2 of composting here in the valley and securing funding. Additionally, there's opportunity to continue education and outreach and to translate those materials into Spanish and other foreign languages. There are lots of collaboration opportunities here in the valley, including some that weren't explored. There's the opportunity to partner maybe with land developers or real estate agents, especially on new developments in the creation of green spaces and in existing developments with green spaces. And finally, a next step could be to re-implement the Red Mountain Park community compost when remodeling is done. So with all that, thank you all for listening to me, and thank you to all of these people who have helped me throughout my project, including my faculty mentors, Dr. Kate Clark and Dr. Ricardo Vasquez Perales. Thank you to my community sponsor, Sue Wallace, and the Gunnison Valley Climate Crisis Coalition. Thank you to the executive director of the Mountain Roots Food Project, Holly Kahn. Thank you to owner and operator of Elements Mountain Compost, Julie Mock. Thank you to WCU's Organics Guild, the Clark Family School of Environment and Sustainability, and my friends and family. Thank you all. Is there any questions?
All right, we do have a few questions for you, Triston. First, how is the Gunnison Wastewater Treatment Center different from a commercial composting facility?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't really get into that in this presentation, but as part of the CDPHE's regulations, there's regulations on even feedstock types. So the wastewater treatment plant would be considered a bio-waste feedstock type, which is different than traditional composting, which usually you have to be classed as like a class 3, which is the highest classification of composting in order to compost those kinds of feedstocks. So it's about feedstocks and those regulations. The simplest to compost are like food scraps, which are type 1, or yes, type 1 feedstocks.
Thank you. Another question. Oh, looks like some questions disappeared. Oh,
I
no,
answered them
here-
all.
No, here, I see what happened. Okay, why have you decided on CESQ as the type of compost facility for those potential partner locations?
Sure.
Also, have you done any consideration of bears?
Of pears?
Bears.
Bears.
Rawr.
Oh, okay. Bears are ours. Yes. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but CESQ are conditionally exempt small quantity composting facilities. So that basically, back to the CDPHE regulations, means it's the least regulated of any commercial composting facility. To do the other ones, you have to submit some pretty complicated forms, which include groundwater assessment. Like, it gets pretty intensive if you want to go above a CESQ. So CESQ, they compost the least amount, but that means that you can source many of them throughout the valley and compost as much as if there was one centralized class 1 or class 2, which are higher classes of facilities, and avoid regulation. And with consideration of bears, that's a good question. Originally we thought about, oh, in vessel, that's kind of a way to avoid bears. But also if you're maintaining a compost facility and you're there, maybe there will be bears, maybe there won't. But it's pretty much like if you can just maintain the facility, there's not going to be any more bears there than there are at the landfill currently. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have right now for specific questions for Triston. But again, we will have a longer Q&A after all the panelists have presented. Next up, we have Abby. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thanks. Hi, Abby again. I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about my MEM project. Oh, wait, I need the clicker. No, it's all right. My project is the advancement and awareness of the City of Gunnison's climate action, resiliency, and environmental sustainability goals. These goals are outlined in Gunny Cares 2030, which is the City of Gunnison's climate action plan, which I'll get into first. All right, so what is Gunny Cares 2030? Gunny Cares is a climate action, resiliency, and environmental sustainability plan or roadmap. You may have noticed that CARES is the acronym for that type of plan. But it's a roadmap of each of these areas building upon the city's comprehensive plan. And how does this relate to my project? That's me there. Last spring, when I was doing project research and didn't know what path I would go on, I was recommended to reach out to the City of Gunnison. Since they were already on my radar, I was pretty excited to get the opportunity for a sustainability internship. The internship's starting goals were based in Gunny Cares, since the objectives had yet to been put to use. One of the recommendations from the plan in particular had already been discussed by the city and needed a follow-up. This was to hire a sustainability manager. And so the first objective of the project became to inform city staff of what a sustainability manager is and why the city should invest in it. Another direction I was pointed toward was the waste management portion of Gunny Cares, specifically the recommendation to research and invest in a community scale composting operation and facility in Gunnison. So this was decided as the second portion of my project. So during the first portion of my project last summer, I was notified by my advisor, Dr. Ricardo, that another organization in the Gunnison Valley was also interested in helping Gunnison achieve a community scale composting operation. And this organization was GVC3, who Triston also worked with, who is the Gunnison Valley Climate Crisis Coalition. They are a volunteer organization who advocates for the reduction of greenhouse gases in the Gunnison Valley. So with Western, GVC3 offered me an internship for the second portion of my project, researching community scale composting. So after all the collaboration and planning, two deliverables were officially set, a report for each project portion, as well as a review of the project and a presentation to those involved. All right, we'll start with the first portion of my project, the awareness of Gunny Cares. So basically, the City of Gunnison wanted information that would help inform City Council and their staff, specifically their city manager, of the benefits of having dedicated staff focused on the implementation of the objectives in Gunny Cares. So starting last summer, I conducted 16 interviews through email and occasionally in person over phone, out of a list of 53 municipalities comparable to Gunnison. The 16 municipalities include those with and without sustainability management. So I gathered what sustainability management looks like for municipalities that have it and what municipalities do without it. Besides these conversations, I researched online for each of the municipalities' different interpretations and definitions of the word sustainability. So I finished the report in October of 2023, and I finalized it and completed a review of the findings to the city staff the next month. And there's a lot of details on this report, so I'm just going to give you all a highlight from each section of the study. So for the interpretation and definition of sustainability, this was a pretty common definition. This municipality said, sustainability is the ability of today's community to use and enjoy our resources without compromising the ability of future generations to use them. As for a community with sustainability management, they gave the advice to do it. It as in invest in sustainability management. Thinking there is not enough work, there is too much. Sustainability should be how we do business. If we build this into the structure, it is not cost or why it is beneficial, it is just utility. And as for a community without sustainability management, this was the case because finding funding for dedicated staff is the most pertinent obstacle, which makes sense. Even though this community still values sustainability, there are just other more pressing needs. So on to the second portion of my project, the advancement of Gunny Cares. Basically, the city of Gunnison, GBC3, and Western wanted research and support for the development of a community scale composting operation. So I started my research in the winter after the first portion of my project. And from a list of goals from this research given to me by the city of Gunnison, the project sponsor, I was able to pull together research for the overarching goal or purpose of the study to build a document to inform these partners of some basics behind community scale composting. And some of the main resources I used were Dana Lehman's research study and books, and articles were, the other. So Dana Lehman, if you don't know who she is an MEM alum. This was her MEM project, this research study on feasibility. She is also the current sustainability coordinator for the town of Crested Butte, and she is also a GBC3 member. She does it all. But her research study on community scale composting was on the feasibility of it, specifically for this valley. So this study was used largely due to the very specific statistics and other information that were directly applicable to my project as well. The second type of source I mainly used were books, basically very detailed handbooks and how-tos on community scale composting, and even one that has a lot of case studies that we could use. I finished the report at the end of April, and I'm still working on finalizing the report, but I presented the review of it last week to city staff and others involved. Again, there are a lot of details I could share, but I'll just go over the outline of my study. So my first section, I went over best practices. I went over first operations, collection and distribution, and more. I also had a projection section, including calculations on the reduction in food waste and finished product. Finished product is basically the compost generated. I also made a list of grant opportunities. These were the ones I recommended the most. And for the last section, I had a list of stakeholders and partnerships. And I organized them by either to consult, involve, or to collaborate with. So I came to some conclusions after completing this project, and some outcomes came from it. After completing the sustainability study management report, I concluded that municipalities with sustainability management are far more successful in accomplishing their goals that tackle global climate change and its local effects. And I agree with and support the recommendations within Gunny Cares in that top image, which include highly recommending sustainability management. And because of the report and outcome, the city of Gunnison established a position, Systems and Special Projects. They have yet to begin hiring, but this position will manage Gunny Cares projects as well as other city initiatives. And because a position within the city will finally focus on Gunny Cares, there will be better engagement with the community and improved climate action efforts. As for the community scale composting study report, I concluded that I agree that community scale composting is feasible for the city of Gunnison. And it would improve the health of our community by bolstering our food system and reducing greenhouse gases. And I agree with, again, and support the recommendations within Gunny Cares recommending community scale composting and investing in it. Because of the report, the outcome is at the beginning of this type of research for the city has begun, advancing the Gunny Cares objective of initiating better waste management methods in the city of Gunnison. If the report is put to use, there will be an eventual increased diversion of waste in Gunnison, leading to the production of, again, less greenhouse gases, but also a decreased need for landfills. As for the recommendations I formed after each study, for the first report, I recommended to either hire a sustainability manager, create that position, but with an alternative name, because sustainability that word can deter people at times, or incorporate the position into another role, or lastly, completely integrate sustainability and climate action into every department. And for the second report, my final recommendations included for the project partners to collaborate to complete a grant, to continue research, whether it's to complete a new waste diversion study for the valley or going down another avenue, or also to begin to plan and design a community scale composting operation, a marketing plan, and or a facility so that they can begin to involve community members to survey them for support and participation. All right, so to get to the end of it all, I just want to explain how and why my project has longevity. So first, another Gunny Cares objective outside of waste management, like an energy or water focus, could be explored as a next project, since Gunny Cares is filled with a lot of useful ideas. And taking on a new Gunny Cares initiative is the way to achieve its overall advancement and improvement. As mentioned previously, the continuation of composting research and planning should be another direction that's explored, as well as empowering community members to become active participants in their community. And that is a very important next step for each project area. With sustainability management, the City of Gunnison's leadership team will have more ability because of their new position to interact with community members and to gather feedback. As for the composting portion of this project, as mentioned earlier, I recommend the project partners to begin planning and designing so that community members can be educated and surveyed. And finally, developing strategies to secure long-term funding and other resources is vital to sustain both sustainability management within the city and develop composting infrastructure in Gunnison. So this can look like pursuing grant opportunities, exploring public-private opportunities, and revenue-generating pathways. To conclude, I would love to acknowledge my amazing advisor, Dr. Ricardo Vasquez-Perales, my first and second community sponsors, Ben Cohen and Amanda Wilson, the City of Gunnison city staff and council, the Gunnison Valley Climate Crisis Coalition, GVC3, especially its Compost and Ag Committee, which includes mentors like Nicole Blazer, Dana Lehman, Dana Delaney, all of the project's participants, MJ Pickett, my first advisor, Lily Richards. As a Cold Harbor Fellow, I would love to also thank Cold Harbor Institute and Butch Clark, and Western and the Clark School, and more, as you can see here. But thank you for your time, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Abby. So we have one question. When do you expect the City of Gunnison Sustainability Systems Manager position to be posted?
I would assume within the year, because they've already, from my knowledge, worked on the description of the position. So follow them on LinkedIn. Thanks.
And next we have Elle. We're going to do a bit of an audio transition. So just one moment. Elle is going to present via a pre-recorded video, and then we'll be live and present for questions.
Um, I don't know if you're talking in person because we can't hear you online. But I just wanted to say I put the YouTube link in the chat and I can send it to anybody if they need it. Sorry.
Okay. Elle, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool, cool. I thought I wasn't supposed to use the microphone right now. Okay. So first question for Elle. Do you think it is possible for these institutional changes in policy to occur at larger institutions?
Yes, I do. I believe that this is possible if people understand and organize themselves. We have this thing called power mapping that we do, which is like understanding like where and who to go to. So first it takes into the context of like the institution itself, of like, you know, who's making the decisions on what, and then getting student involvement is always critical because like at the end of the day, well, if the institution is student-based, at the end of the day, the constituents are the people who make it happen, and the reason for the institution. So if they're not catering to the constituents, there's power there. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Cool.
I want to show my baby too.
All right, awesome. The other questions we have are for other panelists. Do you need to switch the audio or should I just jump in? Okay, just one moment. Okay, sounds like we're good. The next question is back to Graham. So what are benefits other than aesthetics that make it worth it to retain trees along the canal?
One thing I can think of off the top of my head is the urban heat island effect. Because the Highline Canal goes through Denver metro area, the trees help cool the city down significantly because the heat will just get absorbed by the leaves as opposed to being absorbed by the concrete or asphalt. So that's one thing I can think of just off the top of my head as for the benefits with trees other than aesthetics. Another thing I can think of off the top of my head is wildlife interactions, especially with birds. Birding is definitely popular in the Denver metro area. I've led volunteer events with bird watchers and just seeing the diversity amongst birds and how they interact with different amounts of trees by building nests and other things like that, also for mating and for woodpeckers, especially drilling into the trees for their own home. It's just great for wildlife in general. But I would say, if I'm being a little bit biased, I would say the most important one is the urban heat island. You know, we need to make sure that as climate change continues and as the temperature heats up, we need to have cooler areas within the cities and not rely so much on swimming pools because we're already going to be losing a lot of water, especially here in Colorado.
Thank you. This next question is for Triston. What are some of the permitting obstacles for scaling to a commercial compost program, as many folks here already compost at a smaller scale?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, what are the obstacles?
Yes, what are the obstacles, the permitting obstacles?
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, thank you. So pretty much it comes down to how much do you want to work with the CDPHE? And so there were several private citizens that in that list of 10 that were excluded. One of them showed initial interest, but when we started discussing some of the permitting, including just, water is the biggest one. There's a lot of regulations on water, and if you're dealing with waste products before they become compost, people are very concerned about how close are you to water, is it being tested, and other regulations like that. Some other permitting things are like how much feedstocks are you using? So if you're composting in your backyard, that's great. And I want to encourage that. That's what the CDPHE actually would call backyard composting. But to take it to the next level, we're talking thousands of cubic yards of feedstocks, and also where are you going to house that? So it can't be in residential areas. It needs to be in an agricultural or commercial zone as well. I hope that answered some of the question.
Oh, thank you. This next question, I believe, is for Abby and Triston. Have folks looked to connect with local restaurants about participating in a local composting effort?
I can speak to this and then I'll throw it to Abby. So as part of the Gunny Cares, there are objectives in there that state they want to work with restaurants and eventually require restaurants to compost. And when I mentioned earlier that we were originally looking at in-vessel composting, some of the advantages of in-vessel are they're able to compost a lot of those types of wastes that, like ASP, for example, cannot compost very well. It also makes it to where you could throw that in an alley and then maybe work with a couple of restaurants to compost all of their waste. With this project specifically, there could have been more on my part to reach out to restaurants, but our original plan was to work with Zooey Street Brewing Company to utilize their waste yeast products as a nitrogen source, and then also working with coffee shops to get their ground beans as another nitrogen source.
Yeah, commercial participants are the most important sector to focus on in terms of situating collection and marketing and just participation in general. And in my study, I included in my stakeholders and partnerships section that restaurants and any other business actually that produces compostable waste would be included with restaurants as an important commercial participant in an operation.
Thank you very much. Do we have about 2 minutes left? So if anybody would like to submit further questions in the next 2 minutes, please do so now. And I'll just give a moment for you to do that. Actually, here we have another question. I believe this is for Triston, but maybe also Abby again, because it has to do with composting. What are some of the expenses out of the $5,000 that go into yearly maintenance of Western's composts?
So I may have this question may be occurring from like kind of a misunderstanding or miscommunication. So I believe the annual operating budget for the Western Organics Guild is a total of $5,000. This includes I think there's several paid leadership positions, any materials they need, et cetera, et cetera. So the $5,000 that I mentioned was when trying to find a place for residential drop-off services. So the way Elements Mountain Compost's model works is they cite a centralized location where they say, okay, subscribers, you have access to this location, drop off your waste here, and once weekly, I'll come pick it up from this location, take it somewhere else to compost. It avoids some liability with having people drop it off at your place and that kind of thing. So the $5,000 there was our GVCP work group was asked to match the Organics Guild annual budget, and just because of our lack of funding and because it's a startup operation, we couldn't meet those funding asks. So the residential drop-off system, if you guys want to subscribe to it, it's located on the side of Gunnison's City Market here, and you can just online look up Elements Mountain Compost. It's like $14. Also, just compost at Chipeta Gardens. It's free.
And okay, it looks like time's up. If you do have questions, I think our panelists will be around to mingle. We're about to have a 15-minute break, but let's give one more big round of applause for our panelists here.